This is an absolute disaster and a tragedy for the peoples of Ukraine and indeed Russia. But what it does do is it reveals the reality of expensive, damaging, high-cost fossil fuels, and this will actually force us to go green. You've got to distinguish between the short-term panic of how do you cut out 30% or how do you replace 30% of Germany's energy with the long-term strategic reality that they're going to shift much quicker now to renewables. So, of course, in the short term, they're going to refire their coal-fired power stations, switch on the nuclear, buy whatever they can from wherever because it's a crisis. However, what this is going to do is it's going to oblige them much more quickly to get off fossil fuels. So, for example, as you know, the European Union has said that it wants to replace all Russian fossil fuels in the European energy system. That's 20% of our entire demand by 2030. The German government has brought forward by a decade the year of net zero. So no, that you've got to distinguish between the short term and the long term.
Well, I would say that's extremely ambitious, bringing forward the target dates of net zero, wouldn't you? In reality, especially when people are trying to rejig their economies away from fossil fuels, but at the same time, if they can't get the gas and electricity, they're going to go back to fossil fuels. I mean, even Germany are thinking, or they're not thinking, they've said they're going to build LNG terminals again.
This is a war, right? So in war, you do what you have to do, and then when peace comes, you change your policy. It's very, very similar, of course, to what happened in the 1970s when we have the oil shock and a massive crisis, and then you get rationing and all kinds of damaging consequences. But then what did governments do is they put into place efficiency. They massively, at that stage, ramped up nuclear. Our equivalent, what we are going to do this time round, we will also massively ramp up efficiency, and we're going to increase the speed of deployment of solar and wind. And I want to make one further really significant point. There is this kind of false narrative that solar and wind are expensive. This is ridiculous. This stuff costs $50 or euros per megawatt hour. Fossil fuels is over 100 now. And actually, therefore, I would see this crisis as being very material to solve some long-standing issues that we and many others have been pointing out for a long time.
What role will technology play in future renewable market and going green?
Even the IEA says that we have enough technology to get about 3/4 of all of our energy from currently existing technologies. And to put this in context, non-fossil sources are about 20%. So we have an enormous deployment policy problem today. In 20 or 30 years' time, we'll have we might start running up against technology blockages, which is why we need to start solving those today. But there's no technology impediment to stop us from deploying these renewable energy sources. So what will now happen is, as I say, we will deploy solar and wind more rapidly. We'll put more money into the development of green hydrogen. We're going to get more government policies to roll out heat pumps more quickly. We're going to get more efficiency. It is indeed, as I say, the catalyst which is driving what needed to happen.
Is there a question mark over storage for solar and wind technologies?
The storage issue, it has to be pointed out, is an absolute red herring for the system as a whole. When we had 2% of solar and wind in the system, the fossil fuel guys were saying, you can't handle the storage. Now it's like 50% in Denmark, about 25% in most of Europe as a whole. Basically, it just keeps on getting solved by clever technology solutions. So storage is, of course, an issue because of the intermittency of solar and wind, but it has been, and it will continue to be, an issue which is completely soluble through the application of technology and good policy.
How are poorer countries expected to make the green transition?
Well, I guess the question that you need to ask is how are poorer countries expected to pay for $150 per barrel oil and $20 per unit gas. I mean, the cost of fossil fuels is catastrophic now for the global South. It was already a problem. Now it's a catastrophe. So what needs to happen is these countries need to speed up their deployment of these cheaper renewable sources. They need to start changing their policy frameworks to get that solar and wind. The point to me is the global South is absolutely replete with renewable resources, 100 times their current demand, or 1,000 times actually in the case of sub-Saharan Africa. Europe will help through the transfer of technology and expertise, because it's now very much in Europe's interest to ensure that not merely Europe, but the rest of the world gets off their addiction to fossil fuels.
Kingsmill Bond, energy strategist, many thanks for joining us on The Agenda.
Thanks, Stephen.